Hello, yes, this is Ranjana ma'am, and you are watching mine as well as your channel. And this time it is for my Icse students. I brought for you a prose piece from your treasure chest, the third story, The Model Millionaire. Who has written it? Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, one of the best authors of his time. I don't know whether you've read The Selfish Giant. That is another memorable of his works. He has written quite a few memorable works. Among this, The Selfish Giant is one, but that is irrelevant here because the story which you are to read of Oscar Wilde, that is The Model Millionaire. It's a very interesting story, yes. Till the end there is suspense. The main protagonist, I would say there are two main people, rather the young one, Hughie, and the old one is the Baron. Both of them play an equally important role. Of course, people will not agree with me. Y'all also might not agree, and y'all might think that no, Hughie is the main protagonist, but you will find that the Baron also plays no less an important part in shaping Hughie's life. So, I always say that you should read the previous page where a little about the author is given. So, Oscar Wilde short story, The Model Millionaire. Model, this means, no, I am not revealing the secret now. The Model Millionaire tells of a young man who helps a beggar only to discover the beggar is a millionaire. So they have given you the secret. They have told you the suspense, reveal the suspense. Appearances can be deceptive. So many of you, I don't know, y'all had got ready to welcome Merchant of Venice when the syllabus suddenly changed. And you all have Julius Caesar, but I have heard from many of my students that they had started Merchant of Venice. In that, Shakespeare's theme also was the same. Outward appearance can be deceptive. So what lesson do we learn? That don't go by outward appearance. Don't take a person by his outward appearance. Someone might look very serious and very studious person, and inwardly he might have nothing. And someone might look very poor and very ordinary, but he might be a real mine of information within him. So don't judge a person by his outward appearance. The story's central player, that means the main protagonist, Hughie Erskine, you can pronounce it as Erskine, it's a proper noun, believes the painter's model is a beggar and gives him some money. Ironically, the so-called beggar is in fact one of Europe's wealthiest socialites who has commissioned the artist to paint his portrait. With the millionaire dressed in rags, so the millionaire disguises himself as a beggar and wants to get himself painted. And it is then that Hughie comes there and he mistakes this fellow for a real beggar. That means the disguise was so perfect. This act of generosity and the normalization of charity without any expectation of reward in return is what makes the giver truly noble. Who is the giver? Hughie. And it makes him noble because he doesn't expect anything in return from the millionaire. He doesn't know this is a millionaire. He feels charity. He feels that I should help this fellow. He is so much in need of money, and he gives the money, though he himself does not have enough, and yet he shows charity towards a beggar. And that shows what a noble person he is. He might not be having a good job or anything or a lot of money, but he has strength of character. So the author's final play on the word model millionaire and millionaire model brings out the power of syntax and emphasizes the sheer goodness of the central character. So now let's proceed to the story. Here you have got to know through this what the story is about, but let's proceed step by step, and my word, you will enjoy this story. This is the second time it has been introduced. I'm not sure whether it was in the Icse syllabus, but I have taught it earlier. In my 27 years I have taught it earlier. If I'm not mistaken, it was Icse. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is the story is really interesting, really interesting. So let's start. You know what's coming. If you have not subscribed to my channel up till now, please do, and don't forget to press the like button. So let's proceed. The Model Millionaire, and who's the author? Oscar Wilde. Unless one is wealthy, there is no use in being a charming fellow. So this is related to the main protagonist, Hughie. He was a charming fellow, but he was not wealthy. So the author says that unless you are wealthy, there is no use in being a charming fellow. That means charming fellow is of no use. You have to be wealthy. Romance is the privilege of the rich, not the profession of the unemployed. That means unemployed people should not go for romance, should not take this as a profession. Rather, the rich people can indulge in romance. It is their privilege. They are the privileged ones to fall in love. But this is not the job of the poor people or who are unemployed. Hughie was unemployed. The poor should be practical and prosaic. Yeah, the poor should be practical. They should not be emotional, falling in love. Because your love, even if it is reciprocated, in today's world no one will reciprocate. Very few will reciprocate. And even if they reciprocate, their parents won't. Who would want a unemployed son-in-law? No one. So it's no use. So you have to be practical. Get a job first, or come into money, and then only think of love. These are the great truths of modern life which Hughie Erskine never realized. Yeah, Hughie never realized that I should first search for a job, or I should do this or that, and then only I should think of love. But he didn't realize this, that employment or having money was very important in life. And you are judged not by your strength of character, but by your money or the status which you enjoy in society. Poor Hughie. Intellectually, we must admit he was not of much importance. He was not an intellectual fellow. He did not say anything brilliant also. He never said a brilliant or even an ill-natured thing in his life. So he never said something very clever. Neither did he say something which was bad, ill-natured thing. So he did not treat someone with contempt. He did not speak out in a contemptuous manner to anyone, and neither did he say anything very brilliant, very clever. But then he was wonderfully good looking, very handsome. So his physical characteristics, with crisp brown hair, his clear-cut profile, and his grey eyes. So what are the characteristics that make him stand out in the crowd? He was damn handsome, good. He was very good looking. And what are the things which make him so good looking? Crisp brown hair, clear-cut features, and grey eyes. I always thought blue eyes are considered very romantic, but here grey eyes. He was as popular with men as he was with women, and he had every accomplishment except that of making money. So he was good at many things, and he was good at making friends. So he was very popular among his male friends and female friends both. He had a long list of male as well as female friends, and he was good at many things other than making money. That means where he failed was in making money. In making money, he did not get any success, but otherwise he had a lot of accomplishments. And what did he inherit from his father? His father had bequeathed him with his cavalry sword and the history of the Peninsular War in 15 volumes. So no money. His father must have been in the army, the horse riding army we call cavalry. The people, those soldiers who walk and fight, they are the infantry. So he was the cavalry, most probably soldier or some in the higher rank, we are not told what, but he possessed a cavalry soldier, Hughie's father, and he left it for his son. And what else did he leave? The Peninsular War. So this is some book, and in 15 volumes, so 1 to 15 volumes he left for his son, but no money. Poor Hughie, he did not inherit any money from his father. So then what did he do with this? Hughie hung the first over his looking glass. So on top of his looking glass he must have got a nail and put the cavalry sword there. Put the second on a shelf between Ruff's Guide and Bailey's magazine. So he put this 15 volumes of Peninsular War in the bookshelf between two books, the 15 volumes. One side it is Ruff's Guide and on the other side it's Bailey's magazine. And lived on 200 a year that an old aunt allowed him. So an old aunt gave him an annual allowed him an annual income of 200, and he had to live on that, poor fellow. So that was maybe out of charity. She maybe had no one in the world, and so to Hughie she bequeathed this money yearly 200 is nothing. He had tried everything. It's not that he is a lazy fellow, he doesn't want to work, but he doesn't meet with success. That is not his fault, but he tries. He had tried everything. He had gone on the stock exchange for 6 months, but what was a butterfly to do among bulls and bears? So in the stock exchange also he did not meet with any success. Bulls and bears are the symbols of the stock exchange, rising and the falling of the index, and he was a butterfly flitting from one stock to another, so he did not know when to stay constant and all that, so he did not make any impact in the stock exchange business. Then what did he do? He had been a tea merchant for a little longer, so more than 6 months. In the stock exchange 6 months, then he tries his hand at being a tea merchant a little longer, but he had soon tired of Pico and Shuchong. So these must be the different types of teas, and he got sick of these teas. Then he had tried selling dry sherry. That did not answer, so this also meets with failure. The sherry was a little too dry. So everywhere there is some problem or the other. Ultimately he became nothing, a delightful, ineffectual young man with a perfect profile and no profession. So ultimately he remains a very handsome fellow with no job or no other means of income. So he is like a very beautiful showpiece, nothing else. To make matters worse, he was in love. Yes, as it is, this is not enough. He has no so regular source of income other than what his aunt has very generously bequeathed to him, 200 pounds or dollars or whatever a year. So he has no other source of income, and then he falls in love. The girl he loved was Laura Merton, the daughter of a retired colonel, who had lost his temper and his digestion in India and had never found either of them again. So what a nice way to tell that this Laura Merton's father was an army man. He had been in a high post as the colonel, and then he retired. He came back from India, but he suffered from two things. He was bad tempered and his digestion was not good. So it is said that he had left both in India and he never recovered them. That means he had been serving in India as the colonel in the British Army, East India Company or British Army, and when he came back to London or to England, He had become very bad tempered and also suffered from digestive problems. And when you suffer from these two, it's very difficult to make you understand something. Laura adored him and he was ready to kiss her shoestrings. Laura adored Hughie, not her father. And he was also equally in love. He was ready to kiss her shoestrings. That means he was also very much in love. So they were a very made for each other couple, but the father comes in as the villain. They were the handsomest couple in London and had not a penny piece between them. Yes, they were very much in love. They were the most beautiful looking couple and no secrets among them. The colonel was very fond of Hughie but would never hear of any engagement. What a trouble. Colonel was very fond. Why? Because he was such a handsome and amiable fellow. He was very popular among men and women, remember? So he also impressed the colonel. But the colonel would not listen to his appeals for engagement with Laura. How could he give his daughter to someone who had no permanent source of income other than those 200 pounds? Come to me, my boy, when you have got 10,000 pounds of your own. Poor fellow, he gets 200 pounds a year and he is being told, when you have saved 10,000 pounds. Actually, I won't say he's wrong. He's thinking of his daughter's future. This man may be very charming, but he has no regular source of income. So he tells him that when you have got 10,000 pounds of your own, we will see. We will think on this. Not now. You should be able to manage 10,000 pounds a year and then 10,000 pounds of your own. And then only I will think of getting my daughter engaged to you. Before that, nothing doing. I am fond of you, Hughie, but no, I won't give my daughter's hand unless you are able to save 10,000 pounds. He used to say, and Hughie looked very glum on those days and had to go to Laura for consolation. So when he said this, when the colonel would say this, Hughie would naturally feel depressed. And then to whom would he go? He would go to Laura and Laura would console him. Don't worry, things will be better. I am sure you will be able to do something. Or maybe after some time father will finally agree. Don't feel sad, my dear. So she would try to give him consolation because they were madly in love with each other. So now see what happens, which brings a change in his fortune. One morning, as he was on his way to Holland Park where the Mertons lived, he dropped in to see a great friend of his, Alan Trevor. Alan Trevor is a very reputed painter and Hughie's friend. Hughie had the art of making friends. He knew how to make friends. He was such a charming personality, so people naturally fell for him. So he was on his way to meet his friend, the famous painter, and the name was Alan Trevor. But he was also an artist, and artists are very rare. He was a painter and he was also an artist who drew pictures, who drew portraits. Personally, he was a strange, rough fellow. Who was a strange, rough fellow? Alan Trevor, with a freckled face and a red, ragged beard and face freckles, lots of freckles on his face and a red, ragged beard. However, when he took up the brush, he was a real master. So when he took up the brush to paint, he was a master in this art. And his works, they were masterpieces, and his pictures were eagerly sought after, and what he painted, people would be running to buy them. He had been very much attracted by Hughie at first, it must be acknowledged, entirely on account of his personal charm. So even he was attracted by Hughie. Why? Because Hughie was so charming. The only people a painter should know, painters, they always look for charming people. He used to say, are people who are beautiful, people who are an artistic pleasure to look at and an intellectual repose to talk to. Men who are dandies and women who are darlings rule the world. at least they should do so. So initially he was charmed by Hughie's pleasant appearance, handsome appearance, and Alan Trevor believed that beautiful people, they are a treat to the eyes, and even the artists, much sought after by artists. They are the rulers of the world, dandies, handsome and elegant and smart men and beautiful women, they rule the world. However, after he got to know Hughie better, he liked him quite as much for his bright, buoyant spirits and his generous, reckless nature, and had given him the permanent entry to his studio. So initially, why did he like Hughie? Because of his charming appearance. But then when he interacted with Hughie, he got more impressed. Why? Because of his carefree attitude and his general reckless nature. Generous, reckless nature. That means he would be generous to the point of being reckless. And so Alan Trevor gave him permanent entry. Whenever you want, you can come to my studio. So this is very rare. People would not get entry to the studio of such a famous painter, but Hughie had acquired it because of his brilliant, handsome appearance and because of his nature. When Hughie came in, he found Trevor putting the finishing touches to a wonderful life-size picture of a beggar man. So the beggar man was the model of Alan Trevor, and Alan Trevor was giving the last touches to the painting. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in a corner of the studio. So the beggar model was present there. He was standing on a little bit elevated platform. He was a wizened old man with a face like wrinkled parchment and most piteous expression. So how was the beggar model? He was a very old man and lots of wrinkles on his face and a very sad expression. Over his shoulders was flung a coarse brown coat, a rough brown coat over his shoulders, all tears and tatters, and the coat was badly tattered, torn. His thick boots were patched and cobbled. So the boots which he was wearing, that was also cobbled and patched in places. And with one hand he leant on a rough stick, while with the other he held out his battered hat for arms. So a very old and battered hat. He puts it upside down as if asking for money. So the people will put money in the hat, and with one hand he is holding a stick. So try to visualize. What an amazing model, whispered Hughie as he shook hands with his friend. So who is his friend? Alan Trevor. And Hughie is impressed. You found such a wonderful model for your painting. An amazing model, shouted Trevor at the top of his voice. I should think so. Such beggars as he are not met with every day. Alan Trevor knows that this man is not really a beggar. And it is at the request of this person that Alan Trevor is doing this painting. So he is very amused. Alan Trevor is amused when Hughie says, what an amazing model. An amazing model, yes. So he says, and he loudly says why, so that the beggar model hears it, that these type of beggar models you don't find every day. Why? Because this is not really a beggar, he is one of the richest man. And he is posing as a beggar. Most probably he wants his portrait done. Poor Hughie, he doesn't know. A living Velasquez, my stars, what an etching Rembrandt would have made of him. So he is amused and he says, yes, other painters or artists, if they got him in hand, what masterpiece they would have created. Poor old chap, said Hughie, how miserable he looks. But I suppose to you painters his face is his fortune. So Hughie feels very sad for this beggar model. He says, my God, he looks so miserable, but I think y'all find his face interesting. The face is his fortune. Y'all will cash on his sad look and try to put it in your pictures, in your paintings. Certainly, replied Trevor, you don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? So, whereas Hughie is feeling sad for this fellow, and he said so. So, Trevor is very amused and he takes Hughie for a ride. He tells Hughie, of course, I would want my beggar model to look sad. Who would buy a happy portrait of a beggar model? How much does a model get for sitting? Said Hughie, as he found himself a comfortable seat on a divan. So he settles down on a divan and asks his friend Alan Trevor that how much money do you give him for one sitting? A shilling an hour. In this case, he is not giving any money, rather he will receive money from the beggar model. But Hughie doesn't know this. So normally he pays 1 shilling for an hour to the other models. This is a rare model. But he doesn't tell that now. He is just enjoying the ignorance of Hughie. Poor Hughie, you can't blame him. How can he know? And how much do you get for your picture, Alan? So once you've completed your picture and you sell it, how much do you get? Oh, for this I get 2,000. What does he mean by this? The beggar model will pay him 2,000. Because this will not be put up for sale. This is being done at a request of the millionaire who is posing here as a model. But poor Hughie, he doesn't know all this. 2,000 pounds, guineas are gold coins. Painters, poets and physicians always get guineas. So I will get 2,000 gold coins. Well, I think the model should have a percentage, cried Hughie laughing. They work quite as hard as you do. So Hughie says that you should give from your income a percentage to this beggar model. Because if you are painting, they are also sitting still for hours, helping you to do this, create this masterpiece. So they should get a percentage. Why 1 shilling an hour? Rather you should give him a percentage from your earning. Nonsense, nonsense. Why, look at the trouble of laying on the paint alone and standing all day long at one's easel. It's all very well, Hughie, for you to talk, but I assure you there are moments when art almost attains the dignity of manual labor. But you mustn't chatter, I'm very busy. Smoke a cigarette and be quiet. So Alan Trevor refutes the idea. He says what you are saying is just nonsense. Don't we have to work a lot? Painting is very difficult. At times it seems as if it is manual labor. And then mixing the paints and coming with the correct paint for the skin or for the for the wrinkles and all that. You need to make the correct colors. You need to mix the correct colors. And not only that, you are standing in front of that easel where the board is, the painting board, and the frame and the stand on which the painting board is kept. So you have to stand in front of the easel all day long and you are working no less hard than the model. So there are times when art almost attains the dignity of manual labor. So art doesn't remain art anymore and it becomes manual labor, like those manual laborers who work outside. But don't talk anymore, smoke a cigarette and remain quiet. After some time, the servant came in and told Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. Why the frame maker? Because this will be painted, framed, and the beggar model will take it with him, paying Alan Trevor 2,000 gold coins. This is the deal, but Hughie is unaware of it. Don't run away, Hughie, he said as he went out. I will be back in a moment. Why does he say this? Because I told you he is very fond of Hughie. So don't run away. The old beggar man took advantage of Trevor's absence to rest for a moment on a wooden bench that was behind him. So when Trevor left the room, What did the beggar model do? He sat on a wooden bench. He looked so forlorn and wretched that Hughie could not help pitying him and felt in his pocket to see what money he had. So looking at the beggar, he felt very sad at the misery of this beggar model. So he searches in his pocket to see if he has some money. He wants to give it to this beggar. He is getting only 1 shilling for an hour. I think I should help him. Even though he did not have enough money for himself only. But he has a generous heart. All he could find was a sovereign and some copper coins. Copper means copper coins. Poor old fellow, he thought to himself, he wants it more than I do. So this money which I have, I think he needs it more. What a heart of gold. He himself has only this much money and he wants to give it to this beggar model. But it means no hansoms for a fortnight. But if he gives this money, then he will have to pay a price for it. He won't be able to go by cab for 15 days. For a fortnight, he will have to walk home. And he walked across the studio and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand. So he gets up from the divan, moves towards the beggar model and puts the sovereign in his hand. Old man started. He is shocked, surprised. He has never come across such a thing. Someone giving him money, and that also a sovereign. And a faint smile flitted across his withered lips. Thank you, sir, he said. Thank you. So all the withered lips and the wrinkles, they are all the makeup. Because of the makeup, he is looking so miserable. So first he is shocked, oh my God, he is offering me money, and then he smiles. Why? Because he feels that I must be really looking like a beggar. So my makeup or my disguise is so perfect that this fellow feels pitiful for me and he is offering me the money. So he smiles and thanks him. Then Trevor arrived and Hughie took his leave. After this, Trevor came back, Alan Trevor, the artist, came back, and Hughie said goodbye to him and he left, blushing a little at what he had done. And he feels embarrassed. This is Alan's model and I have given him a sovereign, so he leaves the place. He spent the day with Laura, got a charming scolding for his extravagance and had to walk home. So he went and told Laura, see, I went to Alan Trevor and there I found a beggar model. He was looking so miserable. I gave him the sovereign. So Laura also, she scolded him, but not very seriously, in a charming manner. Oh, you don't have money for your cabs. You shouldn't be so extravagant. And now Hughie could not take a hansom, he had to walk home. This is not handsome, this is handsome, a cab. That night he strolled into the Palette Club about 11 o'clock and found Trevor sitting by himself in the smoking room drinking hock and seltzer. So he finds Alan Trevor there. Well, Alan, did you get the picture finished and all right? He said as he lit his cigarette. So Hughie is inquiring that, did you complete your picture? Finished and framed. Remember, the frame maker had come and that is why Alan had to leave. It was for this picture only. So he said, I completed the picture and I have also got it framed. My boy, answered Trevor. And by and by you have made a conquest. So you have really come across a fortune. The old model you saw is quite devoted to you. I had to tell him all about you, who you are, where you live, what your income is, what prospects you have. So now Hughie will feel embarrassed. Why did you tell him everything about me? And he might be coming to my door asking for more charity. My dear Alan. So when Alan Trevor came, the model, beggar model, he was naturally inquisitive. He wanted to know who this fellow is, what is his profession, how much does he earn and all that. And Hughie thinks it otherwise. He thinks that this fellow might be coming to me now for help. My dear Alan, cried Hughie, I shall probably find him waiting for me when I go home. You have told him so much about me. When I reach my home, I will find him waiting outside my home for charity. But of course, you are only joking. Poor old wretch, poor old miserable fellow. I wish I could do something for him. I think it is dreadful that anyone should be so miserable. So he feels real pity for this miserable beggar. I have got heaps of old clothes at home. Do you think he would care for any of them? Now he wants to donate his old clothes because the beggar's coat was in tatters, his shoes were badly patched and cobbled. Why, his rags were falling to bits. His clothes, they were like rags, and it seemed that they would be, anytime they could fall. They were so badly torn. But he looks splendid in them, said Trevor. I wouldn't paint him with a frock coat for anything. But the tatters, the rags, that made him look really like a perfect beggar. I wouldn't expect him to wear a stylish frock coat and appear as my model. What you call rags, I call romance. What seems poverty to you is picturesque next to me. However, I'll tell him of your offer. So yes, to artists, we see things in a different light. You say they are his rags, but I say they are romance. And you find him or his situation to be poverty. You feel miserable for his poverty, but I say this is picturesqueness and it will help me to paint the picture in a much better manner. Anyway, I'll tell him of your offer, that you want to offer him those old clothes. Alan, said Hughie seriously, you painters are a heartless lot. An artist's heart is his head. So, artist's heart is his head, replied Trevor. And besides, our business is to realize the world as we see it, not to reform it as we know it. So, we are painters or artists, and as we see it, we paint it. We are not reformers that we would want to bring a change in the world. And now tell me how Laura is. The old model was quite interested in her. So now he is asking, how is Laura? And even the beggar model, I have told him about her and he is interested. You don't mean to say you talked to him about her, said Hughie. So don't tell me you have even told about me and Laura. Certainly I did. He knows all about the relentless Cornell, the lovely Laura, and the 10,000 pounds. No, he knows everything. I've told him everything about you and Laura being in love, and the Colonel who would not go for an engagement unless you have 10,000 pounds for yourself. You told that old beggar all my private affairs, cried Hughie, looking very red and angry, and now Hughie is very annoyed. I offered him the money as charity, and just because he asks, you tell him everything about me. My dear boy, said Trevor, smiling, that old beggar, as you call him, is one of the richest men in Europe. This is the suspense, and Hughie comes to know of it now. He could buy all London tomorrow without overdrawing his account. So without overdrawing his account, he has the money to buy whole of London. He has a house in every capital. In every capital city he has a house, and dines off gold plates. So he has his food, he has his meals on gold plates, and can prevent Russia going to war when he chooses. So he is a very influential man. He is not only rich but a very influential man, and you think he is a real beggar? What on earth do you mean? Exclaimed Hughie. Now it is Hughie's turn. His head must be reeling. Oh my God! And what did I do? I offered him a sovereign. What I say, the old man you saw today in the studio was Baron Hosberg. He's a great friend of mine, buys all my pictures and that sort of thing, and gave me a commission a month ago to paint him as a beggar. So Baron Hosberg is a good friend of Alan Trevor. He is fond of the portraits or pictures painted by Alan, and he buys many of them. And 1 month ago he had given Alan Trevor a commission, you paint me as a beggar model and I will give you 2000 guineas. And I must say, he made a magnificent figure in his rags, or perhaps I should say in my rags. They are an old suit I got in Spain. So the dress was provided to Baron Hosberg by Alan Trevor. He had brought this dress in Spain and he used it, he gave it to the beggar model to put it on, to pose as the beggar. The dress in rags. Baron Hosberg, cried Hughie, good heavens, I gave him a sovereign. Now poor Hughie could not control himself. He says, I gave him a sovereign. So that must be an insult to one of the richest men of Europe. And he sank into an armchair, the picture of dismay. What have I done? I have given him a sovereign to the richest man, one of the richest men of Europe. Now it's Alan Trevor's turn to get surprised. Gave him a sovereign, shouted Trevor, and he burst into a roar of laughter. He did not know of this deal, that in his absence Hughie had generously given this fellow a sovereign out of charity, feeling miserable for this beggar. So he starts laughing. My dear boy, you'll never see it again. You will never see the sovereign again. He will invest it. I think you might have told me, Alan, said Hughie sulkily, and not have let me made a fool of myself. So I made a fool of myself by offering the richest man a sovereign. I think, Alan, you should have told me in the beginning that he is Baron Hosberg and he is posing as my beggar model. Well, to begin with, Hughie, said Trevor, it never entered my mind that you went about distributing alms in that reckless way. So I never thought that you go on distributing money in this reckless way. Means when you are yourself short of money, you go on giving your money as charity. I can understand you're kissing a pretty model, but you're giving a sovereign to an ugly one. By Jove, no. Yes, you are a handsome fellow, so if you see a pretty model you can go and kiss, and I understand it, but you are feeling pity for this beggar model and offering him a sovereign. No, I can't understand this. How could I think that you would give him you would go and give him a sovereign as charity? Besides, the fact is, I really was not at home today to anyone. And when you came in, I didn't know whether Hosberg would like his name mentioned. You know, he wasn't in full dress. So I had told that I am not going to meet anyone today. But remember, Hughie had permission to enter his studio whenever he wanted. Other than Hughie, he never entertained anyone at particular times. And today was that time. He didn't know whether Baron Hosberg, he is not an ordinary person, whether he would like that I should introduce him. This is Baron Hosberg. Why? Because he was not in his formal dress. He was dressed as a beggar and he might not like it to be introduced to someone when he is not in his full dress. And that is why I didn't tell you that he is Baron Hosberg. What a duffer he must think me. He must be thinking of me as the greatest fool. Not at all. He was in the highest spirits after you left, kept chuckling to himself and rubbing his old wrinkled hands together. I couldn't make out why he was so interested to know all about you. But I see it all now. He'll invest your sovereign for you, Hughie, pay you the interest every 6 months and have a capital story to tell after dinner. So he is not at all, he won't think of you as a duffer. Why? Because Baron Hosberg really appreciated the gesture of Hughie, and especially when he came to know that Hughie had no income of his own, poor fellow, and he had tried his hand at more or less everything and was a failure, and in spite of that, he offered, pitying his miserable condition, he offered this beggar model a sovereign. So he felt very happy that I must be really looking like a beggar. And that is why he was chuckling, he was laughing to himself silently and looking at his wrinkled hands. These are all makeup. So I must have made a perfect beggar model. And that is why this young fellow gave me the money. So he says that is why Baron Hosberg, after you left, he was interested in you and was asking me all these questions. That time I did not know why, but now I understand. So the money which you gave him, he will invest it. And he will also pay you the interest every 6 months for that sovereign, and he will be enjoying himself telling this story at dinner table to the other people, that I perfectly posed as the beggar model, and Hughie Erskine, a charming fellow, he offered me a sovereign. So my makeup must have been real perfect. I am an unlucky devil, growled Hughie. So he feels I've made a fool of myself. The best thing I can do is to go to bed. So I think I must go home and go to bed. And my dear Alan, you mustn't tell anyone. So Alan, please don't go on telling others that Hughie made a fool of himself by offering a sovereign to this beggar model, or rather Baron Hosberg. I shouldn't dare show my face in the row. I wouldn't be able to face people. Nonsense. It reflects the highest credit on your philanthropic spirit, Hughie. So why are you so embarrassed? Why do you feel ashamed? This shows your philanthropic spirit. What does philanthropy mean? The attitude of doing good to others. So he is a do-gooder, whether he has money or not. He is ready to walk home, sacrifice the sovereign. He is ready to offer the sovereign and walk home instead of keeping the sovereign and paying for the ride. And don't run away. Have another cigarette and you can talk about Laura as much as you like. But Hughie is not in a mood. So Hughie wouldn't stop but walked home feeling very unhappy and leaving Alan Trevor in fits of laughter. Alan has a hearty laughter. Oh my God. How Hughie must have made a fool of himself. The next morning, as he was at breakfast, the servant brought him a card on which was written, Monsieur Gustave Nodin, on behalf of Monsieur le Baron Hosberg. So Baron Hosberg has sent someone to represent him, and that person has come to Hughie's house. Who is he? Gustave Nodin. I suppose he has come for an apology, said Hughie to himself, and he told the servant to show the visitor up. So what does Hughie feel? That this Baron Hosberg must have felt that I insulted him, and he must have sent this person to demand an apology from me. That you should be sorry for insulting our Baron by paying him a sovereign. So tell him to wait, I am going to see him. An old gentleman with gold spectacles and grey hair came into the room and said in a slight French accent, Have I the honor of addressing Monsieur Erskine or Erskine? Hughie bowed. I have come from Baron Hosberg, he continued. The Baron. So before he could complete, Hughie interrupts him and says, I beg, sir, you will offer him my sincerest apologies. I am so sorry for having insulted him by giving him a sovereign. So please offer him my sincere apologies. Sincerest, superlative degree. But he has not come to demand an apology. What has he come for? Why has the Baron sent him? The Baron, said the old gentleman with a smile, has commissioned me to bring you this letter. So the Baron has sent me with this letter for you. And he extended a sealed envelope. On the outside was written, a wedding present to Hugh Erskine and Laura Merton from an old beggar. And inside was a check for £10,000. So that £10,000 which the colonel had demanded that Hughie should have before he would say yes to the engagement, this beggar model or Baron Hosberg, he feels this money is the only obstacle in Laura and Hughie's getting married. So that is why he sends that money, because to him £10,000 means nothing. A person who has a house in every capital, who dines on gold plates, and who is so influential that he can stop Russia from going to war, and he's one of the richest men, to him what does £10,000 mean? But £10,000 to Hughie means that it can help him to get married, and this is a reward for his kind and generous nature. He has earned this reward from the beggar model. So from an old beggar. When they were married, Alan Trevor was the best man, and the Baron made a speech at the wedding breakfast. So these were naturally the very revered guests, very honored guests at Hughie and Laura's wedding. Alan Trevor was his best man, and the Baron also, he gave a very nice speech at the wedding breakfast. Millionaire models, remarked Alan, are rare enough. But by Jove, model millionaires are rarer still. So millionaire models means millionaires who pose as model. They are very rare. Like Baron Hosberg had played he had posed as the beggar model. So this is rare. But what is rarer? Model millionaires. That means millionaires who become a role model for others to follow, who feel the sufferings and who feel pity for others. Normally when people are very rich, many rich people, they are just indifferent to the miseries of others. Whereas many times poor people have more sympathy towards the miserable people, like Hughie. Hughie did not have much money, and yet he gave this fellow a sovereign. But think of Baron Hosberg. He thought that this £10,000 is an obstacle in the way of their marriage, so he gives this money so that the marriage takes place. So he is a role model for other millionaires, that they should come and help those who are in need. You have so much money, you have millions, but think of those who maybe in that way, who have some problems in their lives, and money is an obstacle in their happiness. So try to bring happiness to others. So that is why the last line is the punch line. Millionaire models, remarked Alan, are rare enough. That means millionaires posing as models are rare. Many millionaires would not want to, hardly any millionaire would want to pose as a beggar. They are so proud of their riches. But model millionaires, that means a millionaire like Baron Hosberg, he is not only a millionaire model, but he is a model millionaire. Why? Because he sets an example, he is a role model for other millionaires to follow. He comes to the rescue of Hughie because he realized the innate goodness in Hughie, that in spite of himself being hard of cash, he has sympathy for those who are lesser than him, and he understands this goodness in Hughie, and he gives this money. So he is a model millionaire also. So this is your short story, The Model Millionaire, and I'm sure you must have liked it, right? It's such an interesting story. And the punchline, model millionaires are rare, but millionaire models. So millionaire models are rare. 1 minute, I've forgotten the line. Millionaire models are rare enough, but model millionaires are rarer still. So which are rarer? Which you will find one in a million or one in a billion. Model millionaires. That means who make themselves as a role model for others to follow. Like Baron Hosberg did on coming to know of Hughie and his affairs. So how he steals the show in the end. So I'm sure you must have liked it, and I have tried to explain it as lucidly as possible. And now I'll take my leave. Have a good time ahead, and yes, wait for my upcoming videos.